All right. Well, we're back with episode 2 of Teamsters Talk. And I am Tom Collins, also known as TC. And I'm here today with our brother Adam Ochoa again, my friend and coworker. I want to thank you for coming on again today, Adam.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback from a lot of members. I guess this is really helping, and so I want to continue to be a positive influence on people on understanding what their rights are as a Teamster, and helping them feel connected, feel a little bit lighter, and feel a little bit more supported. And so we've been discussing what topics, and we're in a year right now where everybody knows this is called the negotiating year at UPS. And when you're in a negotiating year, you know that means that the contract is coming to an end, and that our union representation is going to the table with representation from the company, in this case UPS. And they are going to look at every aspect of the contract and get what they can for their own side. And so the union's looking at getting our members more of what we need, more of what we want, more fairness, I would say. The company is looking to make more money, plain and simple. They're looking to cut cost on their, on their employment, and try and save money so that they can make more profit. And so we're going to be looking at how the process works, because I've never been behind the closed doors. I know vaguely, I think the same as most members, on what the process kind of feels like or what you hear, but you kind of make up in your own mind what it looks like. You know that they set a date and they're going to come together with meetings, and that they're going to be discussing the whole contract, and well, I don't want that, and I want this, but we really don't know how the process works in detail. We don't know what behind closed doors kind of looks like. So we all have this vague idea of what it, looks and sounds like, and all that, and then we finally arrive at a point where we either have a contract, or then we're at the deadline and they either extend the old contract, or all this stuff goes on until you're finally under the new contract. You can breathe again. And as members, not knowing all that stuff kind of can be frustrating, because you're just getting like bits and pieces of information. Hey, we couldn't come to an agreement on this. Hey, this is what's going on. They want to take away this. Hey, a victory, we got this. But you're like, okay, you're kind of the tail end of it all. And it would be nice to have some added insight and understand how we're supported, or what we can be looking for. And we definitely need to know what the issues are and what it is we need to be looking for to moving forward as Teamsters, especially at UPS, or at least in this case at UPS. So that being said, that is our topic today. I would like to pick at Adam's brain and find out the whole process and how it all works, and then maybe dig into some of those details and find out some of the things that members have never known and would love to find out about how that all works, so that we understand what's going on as we're waiting for answers and waiting for for something to be set in stone, for contracts to be made. So that being said, I'd like to start out by saying that we now have an email, and that way anybody who is enjoying these recordings, these videos, and getting a lot out of it, but would like to contact us for any reason whatsoever, would like a topic covered that we could put into the mix. Anybody who's just got issues they'd like to discuss, just like to reach out to us in any way, any comments, concerns, whatever. We are perfectly willing to hear all of those and reach out and stay connected with the fellow members. And so that that email is teamsterstalk@gmail.com. And so we appreciate all the support, by the way, guys and girls. So that being said, one more thing is disclaimer. We are not, I nor Adam are official representation of the local union or the broad scope, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters in any way. We are simply members of the IBT in good standing and would like to have a public discussion in an opinion format of topics, issues pertaining to Teamsters and its members. And so that being said, good morning, Adam.
Good morning.
So again, like I said before, I've never been on the other side in the details and stuff. But before we get into the details, I really want to know what is from start to finish. So when we're coming up on a negotiating year, when the contract's ending and we all know it's coming, I don't even know how early that starts, like the preliminaries to those negotiations start, but maybe even the year before, the year prior. But can you walk us through an overview of kind of the starting point of these preliminaries, and how Teamsters prepares for this, and then reaching out and the connection between the IBT and UPS corporate, and then how they start coming together, and how it ideally finishes, and some of the problems that can come along the way.
So traditionally, and it's been done a little different this time, but traditionally the actual negotiations start about a year out. That's both sides meeting with the company. And I think it's important to understand that there's two sets of negotiations going on. So as most of you, we talked last time, when you look at your contract, you've got three sections, right? You've got the white section here, which is the master, the sort of beige section, which is the supplemental, which is your full-time employees in Northern California, and the blue section, which is the part-timers in Northern California. So the master contract has one set of negotiations, and the two supplements, NorCal, have another set of negotiations. Now, those go on eventually sort of simultaneously. In other words, one room will be another in the same facility, and the other room will be the master, and they kind of play off each other. Everything plays off the master contract. And there's a national negotiating committee and a NorCal negotiating committee. And then all of the business agents, like your local representatives, sit in those negotiations or are part of those negotiations, at least historically. Even if they don't sit up at the table, they're in the audience because they're absorbing, so that when they go back and they're meeting with each other, they can comment and add to what was said in those sessions. This time around, the International has set those negotiations to be on a much shorter time frame, roughly about 6 months, 5 to 6 months. So here in 948, we had our proposal meetings with our local union downtown October 30th, day before Halloween. And they had two meetings, one in the morning, one in the evening. And you could have gotten either before you got there or the day you got there, the local gave out these worksheets, and this one already has stuff printed in it, but they gave out these worksheets with a header, and it says 2023 UPS contract proposal form, and it would say either master rate here or sort writer for the part-timers or supplement. So you could get these ahead of time and fill them out or bring them. I got mine ahead of time. I typed them out because my handwriting is really bad. So I wanted to make sure that whatever I turned into the union, right, they could read it, because I know, man, sometimes I can't read my own handwriting. So I typed them out, and you basically can't ask for anything. And I mean, literally, if you wanted to, you could ask for what you wanted in the vending machine. But of course, that's not something that I've never seen that come up, at least in these negotiations. But stuff that either contractual stuff that we have now that you want to change, or stuff that's completely new. You can say, hey, I'll give a good topic for the Visalia building is climate control, right? I mean, that place is just obsessively hot in the summer. Numerous complaints. I think we've all complained about it, that there's just no airflow in that building. I mean, it's hotter inside than it is outside. And, there's just not much being done about that. And that's something that you could propose. Hey, there is a section of the contract to deal with that, but maybe we need to make it stricter, right? Maybe we need to come up with not just that they'll have fans or they'll have this, they'll have maybe temperature settings, right? The building will not be above a certain temperature. If it is, company will do something to remedy that. So anyways, the sky's the limit to what you can propose. Obviously, to have credibility in those proposals, right, you want them to be somewhat in a reasonable range. But I always tell the members, never assume that what you want is unreasonable. Ask for it, right? Because you get what you ask for. And then between your officials and the negotiating committee, they can kind of weed that out and see what's possible. It may be that everybody wants climate control, but everybody has a different idea of what that is. So they kind of meld that to make one proposal. So that being said, so we have those meetings. I attended both meetings just to, in case there was anything that, we missed or didn't from one meeting to another. And during this this session here with Tom in the next couple of sessions, we'll put some of mine up just as examples, so you can see kind of how a member proposes something, and then the union takes that back and considers it, and then takes it to the various bodies. So our local members they turned all those into the NorCal committee and the national committee, and then they will go in there and push for what our members want in 948, along with all the other locals. Some of that will be similar. Some of it will be totally unique to the local. And, so the more we can get more of the other locals on board with an idea, obviously the better, because now all those representatives are in that room fighting for a single issue, better chance of getting that. So that's sort of a rundown of how the proposal meeting works. Then negotiations start. And I believe for NorCal, they started in February or early March. I believe it was February. The national negotiations are going to start in April. As I said before, traditionally that was done a year out. The general president has decided that he wants to shorten that. So we'll see how that goes. That's a new avenue. It's, I think the thought process is that we'll get down to business sooner, and there'll be less sort of, gauging each other or feeling each other out for so long. It's a different approach, and we'll see how that goes. Hopefully it works out well. Come August 31st, though, he has told UPS, and I think Tom alluded to this earlier, that there's been years where it didn't get done by the August 31st deadline, but we thought we were close, right? So we extended so far, out to get a deal done. Our general president has said that there will be no extension. He has drawn the line with UPS that says, listen, either negotiate, we want a contract, or August 31st, we will strike. And we'll get into what strike means down the road a little bit later. But so it is an all-in approach. We'll see how that goes. We're still have some time. They're still meeting, but the latest updates are that there is no agreements yet. So we'll see.
So, so from here, when they get together, what does that look like? They get together and they talk about like different aspects of the contract. Is that right?
Correct.
I'm guessing one aspect would be like pay scales and whether it's fair pay and things like that. And then they just continue getting together until they've got an agreement, and then I'm guessing they let the lawyers have it from there, and then it gets set in or whatever they got to do to make it legal.
Right.
And then all parties sign. And then so if we have that, then it ends at that point. Our new contract takes over, and then we're past negotiating year, and what's done is done.
Right. So good point, Tom. So couple things. The negotiations always start out with what they call language, which is work rules. For instance, like the first thing that usually comes up, you look at it both, is seniority. And I have a proposal, and I'm sure some other members gave proposals on seniority. So they'll go over everything that's non-economic, and they'll usually hash that out first. And then the last thing to usually get negotiated, even though they have proposals on the table for economics, they're usually not addressing those until they get the language sorted out. So they'll go through that process. Once they have what they call a tentative agreement, that will come to you, the members. And that I can't express to you. That's the key to everything, right? It's not like the union and the company come up with this agreement and it's just done and you got to take it. No, there will be a ratification meeting, just like our proposal meetings. And I'm sure they'll have a couple of those on a Saturday, or maybe even Saturday, Sunday, where you'll get to see all the changes. And I think I have my old one from the last contract, but what it shows is similar to like the proposals that I wrote up, which is here's the old language, and they'll be lined through that language so you can still read it, right? But you can see what it was. And then the new language will be bolded or in red or however they choose to do it, or highlighted. So you can see what it was and what it changed to, right? And they'll explain that. They'll answer any questions on that. Then they'll go to the next change. Then, within a week or so of that meeting, week or two, you'll get a ballot in the mail, and it'll basically say, do you agree to this? And you'll put yes or no. You'll send that back in. They might even do it electronically this time, to where you can do it on a link or an app. Not quite sure. I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but one way or another, you'll either get a ballot or there'll be a electronic way to do it where it verifies your membership. And if the members ratify that, it's basically 50% plus one. Then the contract goes into effect. If they don't, then the union will either take us out on strike, or they can always change their mind to continue to negotiate. If the general president says that's not going to happen, but I guess, that all depends too on just how close we are. If it's one issue that the members have said, hey, if it wasn't for that, I'd vote for it, right? Then there's a decision for him to make as to whether or not he thinks he can get that done in a reasonable amount of time, to the approval of the membership. That'll be a decision for our general president at that time. So at the end of the day, you control whether or not this contract ratifies. Sometimes in the democratic process, people say, my vote doesn't matter, doesn't count. It greatly counts. I mean, this is your livelihood. And I always tell people, these contracts are 5-year contracts generally. You don't want to not be involved and then spend the next 5 years going, man, I wish I would have changed that, or I wish I would have said something, because a lot of times it's just a matter of people saying something that sparks other people to say stuff. So be involved. Even if the contract ratifies and there's stuff in it you didn't like, at least you're educated on, can't tell how many times I've had members come to me a year or two later and go, well, when did that change? Right. And, if they'd showed up at that contract meeting and read those, ratifications, they would have known the change. Whether they like it or not, that's, their opinion, and everyone's entitled to that. That's a good thing. But you still want to be educated on what the changes are, whether you agree with them or not, because, you want to know your rights. As me and Tom talked in the last video, knowing your rights is key. So make sure, I know we're all busy, but I would say if there's 2 union meetings you attend, and it should be your contract proposal meetings and your contract ratification meetings, because you're going to live with those decisions, for the next 5 years. Right.
So let's get into the weeds of. I had a question. Has there ever been a ballot sent out that the members voted no at UPS?
So yes. So 97 when we were on strike last. We didn't have, that was a little different. Oh, so let's go back to the last contract. The last contract, yes, the members voted that contract down, but there was a rule in our international constitution that said if less than 50% of the membership voted, it has to be rejected by 2/3, not just 50% plus one. Less than 50% of the members voted. And even though it was voted down, I want to say, I can't remember the number, but slightly less than 50%, the General Executive Board of the International ratified that contract for that reason. They were bound to do that, right? That's the rules. And that was an old rule put in sort of for what we just talked about, which is people need to get involved, right? So it was kind of a way to entice people. Listen, we're not just going to have a couple of people voting and vote down a good contract. You need to participate. And I don't think in my time, I don't think that's ever been an issue, but last time it was. And that's why it's so important and why you see so much stuff in the mail about, getting involved, because now in the recent Teamsters convention 2 years ago, myself along with other delegates to that convention, we changed that rule. So that rule no longer exists. So now it's just 50% plus one. So if 10% of the members vote and 5.1% of them vote no, it's rejected. So it's just simple majority now. So that's good and bad, right? I mean, we don't want to see just a couple of people voting or a few people voting, and because if they vote it down, that means there's a huge chunk of people out there that maybe don't care or aren't involved, and that's never good for us. Our strength is in our involvement as members. The company is unified, behind themselves no matter what, right? They don't have a choice. They're not a democracy. They do what their CEO tells them to do, and they're going to be unified whether they like it or not. We have the choice to be, but it's paramount that we are.
Okay.
We've got to come together on that. And even if you vote yes or no, that's your prerogative, but you got to vote. You got to vote because the company sees those votes, right? They're going to know this, especially in today's world, right? They're going to know what percentage of those participated. And even in a no vote, if they see the majority of the members voted, they know, hey, they're serious about striking. Right? They've got to know that you're serious. And so you've just got to participate. It takes literally a few minutes, right? Literally a few minutes. So just can't tell you that regardless of how you decide to vote, you got to vote.
Right. And, I mean, that's what the union stands on is the unity of our numbers. And there's power in numbers, and that's why the union exists. And that's ultimately what gives us our leverage to get more fair treatment, get the things that we need for our families, and not be one. I mean, we deserve these things. We work hard, and so there's no reason not to participate. We need to participate. We need to get involved. And these are important issues. This ultimately decides, this can be as important as your son who has a condition, which I myself have a son with a condition, getting the medical treatment that they need and not costing you your home to do it. I mean, it's as simple as that. So you've got to get involved. This is super important. You've got to put your vote in at the very least, like Adam said. It shows our unity. And it creates the leverage that we need to gain the fairer things that we need. And honestly, there's no greed in standing together in order to take care of our families. So all we're asking for is what is fair and right and good and keeps us. Honestly, our company is one of the top, if not the top performer in our field in the shipping industry, and in every aspect, in our level of safe driving, to the amount of packages, the types of packages we handle, and so I mean we perform well, and we deserve well, and that's my opinion. That being said, what's that?
So Tom, that's a great point, because going back to the strike in '97, the number one issue was that the union, or the company, I apologize, wanted to take control of our pension, meaning they wanted to move us into a company pension. And the way your pension works now, the pension is a separate entity, doesn't answer to the company or the union per se. It's its own body, and it makes the decisions that are best for the members. And the company wanted to basically put us in the pension like they had their management in. We were adamantly opposed to that, and anybody who's been around UPS long enough, Tom can speak to this. Management's retirement has been changed multiple times. First it's a pension, next thing it's some type of hybrid that, they kind of have, but they don't have. It's more money, it's less money. It's constantly changed to the benefit of the company and not to the retiree. Your pension is a defined benefit. You can go down to your local union office right now, and as long as you've been in the pension at least 5 years, they can give you a projection, and it will tell you how much you're going to get. And of course, once you become full-time, that number starts going higher because you're getting more going into it. But when you retire, they're going to give you a set number, and whatever that number is guaranteed for the rest of your life. The company's pension, it's just changed multiple times. Their medical benefits have changed multiple times. All to the benefit of their stockholders. And you have a legally binding labor agreement that says this is what you get. And you're going to get it regardless of how they perform, what their stockholders want or don't want. So just remember that to Tom's point, if they came in this next contract and said, we want you to pay $300 up for your medical, almost no part-timer can afford that, right? That's just impossible. And full-timers, that takes a huge dent out of their budget. For a company that just had its 2 most profitable years ever, and not by a little bit, more than double. So there's always got to be, something to make sure that what you are promised is there, and that it doesn't change at the whim of, something outside. So, good point, Tom.
So Adam, let's start at the beginning, and let's get into some of the details. So you were talking about the proposals, and by the way, this kind of is a good opportunity while we're talking about proposals to talk about what are some of the key issues on the table. What are some things in our current state at UPS, considering the profit margins that UPS have had, and the economic climate of our nation right now, and how the value of the dollar has decreased quickly and quite a bit. What are we as members looking for? What do we want to absolutely keep? What do we want to gain? So walk us through the proposal process, and we can use yours as an example. And I'm sure that you had some really good stuff in the proposals that shows us what it is, some of the things we should be looking for.
So going back to the last proposal, UPS was in a different state 5 years ago. So we're talking pre-COVID, right? And those of us who've been around long enough, and I've been in those negotiations twice, when I first came to UPS, it was us and FedEx, right? And I think at the time, 75% of the packages, we had the business. Now there's a million competitors, and we're still the number one, like Tom said, as far as performance and movement. The post office getting into the package game, they probably deliver more packages, or at one time we're delivering more packages than us in the recent history. But we're still that major player. That being said, we could kind of see the trend of losing market share. And one of the big reasons that we were losing market share is we were the only ones not doing Saturday and Sunday delivery. And that, just has, those of you who know, has become just a huge part of business. There are a couple of reasons. People want their stuff delivered when they're home. And if they order something, on a Thursday, Friday, whatever, they want to be able to get it. They don't want to wait. They don't want that 2-day lag of the weekend. So addressing that loss of market share, not loss of money, because they've almost never lost money. They've always continued to grow, but you do want to get ahead of those things. As part of the union's job, right, is to see trends coming and try to address those before they become a problem. And so they came up with a hybrid type of job. And for those of you who are still part-time, long-time part-timers, there's a position called utility driver, where you work the preload or you work the twilight or even the day sort in this case sometimes, and then you go out and you drive. And that job always paid your part-time rate when you're inside and the package rate, your progression, when you drove. But you were still part-time. So you still got the part-time pension contribution. You didn't have an 8-hour guarantee. You didn't get full-time seniority. So basically it took that position or an option for a person to become what they call a 224 driver, which the bottom 25% of the drivers would work the preload or another sort and then drive the other half of their day. But instead of getting two separate rates, they would get sort of something in the middle. So if the part-time rate was $16 an hour and the driver rate was $40 an hour, it would be like $35 an hour for the whole day. And we can get into the actual numbers because it depends on what part of the progression you're in, but it was sort of a splitting the difference. But you also were full-time now. So your name went on the full-time seniority list. You had an 8-hour guarantee, full-time pension contribution. And once you moved out of that bottom 25%, you would be a regular package car driver you wouldn't work inside the building anymore. Fast forward, COVID hit. Those members no longer were going to do the inside drive. They ended up just driving all the time because the volume went out the roof. A lot of people were staying home because of COVID, so there were staffing issues. So they basically just became a full-time driver at a lower rate of pay, which was never the intent of that. The company knows that, but they took advantage of that, and those drivers, were a lower paid driver. So one of the things that I had proposed, and I believe that national negotiations are proposing the same thing. In fact, the general president has said that it's a strike issue if it doesn't go away, is eliminating the 224 position, not the drivers, meaning we'll go back to the old system where if you're driving, you're driving. You're a full-time driver, period. You'll be in the full-time driver progression, not the 224 progression. And we'll address the Saturday and Sundays another way, right? It probably more than likely, I would assume you'll just have a full-time driver who works a Tuesday through Saturday or a Wednesday through Sunday or a Sunday through Thursday. You'll just have a regular work week. It just won't necessarily be Monday through Friday. Of course, you'll still have your Monday through Friday will be the bulk of your drivers, but they're already doing that anyways, right? Our 224s are already delivering all the Saturdays. Sometimes they're being, forced in on Mondays. So one of my proposals, and I believe I said the International and NorCal has proposed the same thing, is to eliminate 224, address the Saturday and Sunday delivery with another method of full-time drivers, and eliminating forced 6th and 7th day punches. During COVID, with all the staffing issues, a lot of our drivers, even our regular package car drivers, were getting forced into a 6th work day. They were working 6 days a week for months and months and months. Tom can tell you he's been a package car driver the bulk of his career, and that job is excessively physical. I mean, it's even when you're doing everything right, and you're taking your time and using your grab handles and using all the lifting methods, that job is your body is going to pay the price for this. And to do it 6 days a week, some of those drivers were doing 10, 11, 12-hour days because the volume's so heavy. It's just not sustainable. You want to go home healthy. You want to retire at a relatively healthy. Doesn't mean you're not going to have a little wear and tear, but you don't want to walk out of there with 2 surgically repaired knees. Your back shot, your shoulder shot. All the safe work methods in the world aren't going to sustain a 6-day work week for the rest of your career. So eliminating that, coming up with a new proposal, which is basically just, create different 5-day work weeks, no forced 6th or 7th day punch, and figure out how to make that work while still protecting the bulk of the drivers for a Monday through Friday work week.
Okay, so that's one of the issues. And was that in your proposal?
It was, and we'll go through that, and it would have been on page.
Is that in the master?
It's in the master, and that is going to be. It'll be on the second page. And
Okay.
it's where it says Article 22.4, and the entire 3 pages of 224 has been deleted. Part of that too, the other problem with the 224 is they have no 9.5 protection, no 8-hour requests, stuff like that. So they should have all of that back. Part of the issue with the 224 position is it doesn't have the 9.5, the excessive overtime protection.
Mm-hmm.
Or the 8-hour request language, all the protections that the regular drivers get. And that's because it was never thought that they would be working that, right? They were going to work the preload or the twilight and drive. Utility drivers never had an issue with overtime, but the 224s have. They've gotten not only the excessive overtime, but no protection from it. And they deserve and need the 9.5 protection. The company has shown that they are going to use them to the last minute available if they have to, and that's just something they need, that protection, regardless of what the new version comes up with, whether it's, like I said, a Sunday through Thursday job or a Tuesday through Saturday. Just make them regular drivers with all the same protections. They might be on a different schedule, but they need the same protections and the same pay.
Agreed.
It's just, and Tom can tell you this. When you're a new driver, it's already tough enough because you don't generally have a bid route for the most part. You're floating a lot on all the heaviest, toughest routes. Those are probably the most physically demanding years of your career because you are just, you're somewhat lost all the time because you don't have a lot of knowledge on different routes. So you're kind of chasing your tail a little bit, which just, by nature tends to be harder on your body because you're running harder. The only thing you have in your favor is youth, which, you think you're invincible. So you run harder and harder. And, you go to the driver PCM in the morning and look at all the knee braces. It is, most of them will tell you, man, when I was younger, I wish I would have just slowed down a little and, taken care of myself a little better because once those knees go, it's, they're gone. So, always remember just to protect yourself, protect your body, and work safely. But that deletion there, I think Tom has it up.
Yeah, I'll go back to it again. So here we are. Let's see. Yeah, it's the full-time combination part-time employees, right?
Yep.
And section 4, and it's all crossed out. This is all that stuff right there. All of that crossed out. So this shows right here just the depth of what can be taken to negotiations. I mean, you got a full section, not a word or two. I mean, this whole section is just Adam's deleted it out as like this is no longer going to apply to our drivers or part-time coming uppers. And that doesn't affect, by the way, the staffing issues. That's not going to take away jobs. At one time, this was created 10 plus years ago as a means to create more jobs. They were holding people stagnant in the part-time position for way too long and not creating new jobs for our members to move up into full-time positions. So this was, as Adam has kind of walked us through, this was a way of making more jobs. In fact, I remember when they proposed this and it was accepted, hearing a number at that time that this created approximately 10,000 jobs across the United States in UPS. So, I mean, it was a huge win for the members. And that being said, as time went on, as the company does, they found a way to use that language to their benefit, and especially in current times with the need for major amounts of staffing in the especially in the driver's field and the package field. They've just used this as a way to keep almost like a longer progression, like a super long progression. Like
Right.
now you're in this status, and then what is it? It's the bottom 25%. Is that correct?
Correct.
The company's used it as a way to keep the bottom 25% at this lesser pay, at these lesser kind of rights. So 22.4 is eliminating that completely is really huge, and great insight in seeing that. I mean, when I first became a driver, there was no 22.4. Everybody who became a full-time driver had the same as everybody else, except for your pay progression. And if during part-time you had done certain things in a certain timeline prior to being hired as a full-time driver, you could actually enter package as a full-time, as full progression as well. But all drivers were considered the same back then. And I think we definitely need to get back to that. So, I mean, that's great insight on your part, Adam. And it just shows how the proposal, you can go after anything.
Well, and that's one of the things with on the union side, when you're agreeing to proposals, either ones from the company or ones that you give to the company, why the process can sometimes be very long, because our NorCal committee will take one proposal, for instance, right? And they'll dissect every possible way that it could go wrong, right? Because, hey, most of them and have been around a while, and they've seen how the company will take what seems to be something good and turn it to their advantage. And hey, there's always some of that, right? You never can have everything perfect, but you also want to think, hey, this may be good now, but what happens if this happens? And so some things seem really great in the moment because there's an issue, but down the road, what if the volume drops? What if the volume increases? What if this certain service changes? How is that going to affect that proposal? Because you're trying to sort of forecast the future a little bit and see how it could be a negative too, right? It's easy to predict the positive on current conditions, but times change. I mean, COVID may have been the greatest tool for us to see that, man, the most extreme thing can happen, and how does that affect everything?
Right.
So, and that's really what made 224 a bad thing, because no one ever thought volume would go up. Well, I think it was 26%, which is massive, right? And then on top of that, staffing went down because everyone's staying home with COVID. Sort of the perfect storm that just kind of blew that out of the water. Of what was on its original merits, was a great way to get more people into driving sooner. Full-time seniority, full-time pension, all of that, which means you can retire sooner. It just turned them into full-time drivers at a lower rate of pay. And that's, no one could have saw that coming, but now is the time to address it.
I agree. What are some of the other issues that we're looking at in the proposal?
So this one's going to seem, and it's kind of it depends on what side of the argument you're on this. But one thing that I proposed, and I believe is on the national table, is air conditioning in the package cars. And I'll give you a little bit of insight. Our competition has air conditioning in their package cars, whether it's Amazon, some of the FedEx drivers. You hear the argument, the doors are open all the time, it's not going to matter. I'll reference back to Tom again. Tom's got 20 plus years in package. If you had air conditioning and you could close the doors every once in a while and get that body temperature down and just have something cool to bring your core temperature down. We've had several heat-related illnesses in our facility, drivers and inside for that matter, but drivers especially. yes, drinking water is important, cooling down, but it gets to be 105, 110 in the valley on a daily basis. Those package cars are a metal box. When they go back every time, every single stop, go back to get that package, that box back there is not, it's an oven. It's an oven. And package car drivers pay the price for that at the end of the day, right? And then they're getting messages on their board and they got deadlines to go. And it's easy to get overheated. And if you have the ability, 20, 30 seconds, maybe even a minute between stops sometimes, or you're just overheated and you want to sit there in that AC for a few minutes and cool down. I believe the International or somewhere on the UPS Teamsters app, there was when you go to a car dealership and it shows all the options, they had gotten hold of that type of invoice for one of the package cars, that for UPS getting, and the air conditioning option was like $160.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And, of course, then the argument is, yeah, but then it lowers fuel mileage and it does this and that. And hey, that's all true. And then there's, servicing that piece of equipment. But nationally, I know there's been some big cases out of Southern California and Arizona where, package car drivers have died. There was one in Florida, I believe, that died from heat exhaustion.
Wow. I didn't know about the death.
At what point? Right. We had a driver in Visalia who had kidney failure en route. And he has since passed away from other health issues. But two drivers, I believe, in Fresno had renal failure or kidney failure. So it's a real thing, right? And yes, like I said, drink your water, take your time, but that's easier said than done with the pace that UPS tends to set, right? Their pace is a very fast pace. Air conditioning is not out of the realm. It's not this major expense that we're going to have to take a wage freeze for air conditioning, even though they may tend to say that. It's just not the case. So I have proposed that air conditioning be mandatory in any vehicles. We would even be, I'm sure, open to the option of any new vehicles purchased because they're always buying new trucks.
Right.
Anything bought after ratification. So over the next 5 years, right? 6, 7 years, everything would have air conditioning, but you've got to start somewhere. You've got to start somewhere. It can't just be, well, we'll try maybe a few a year. Maybe you do 10% of the fleet, 15, 20% of the fleet a year. But they buy new vehicles like crazy because our drivers wear them out. I mean, they're putting millions of miles a day on them. So that's another thing that was proposed, along with, as we'll talk later about, better conditions in the building for heat and cooling.
I was one of those guys. You actually just convinced me. I was one of those guys who I was like, I don't know. I always tried to be a little hardcore in some things. And it was people would, you'd come out sweating and I learned to adjust. I mean, as I get older, it takes a little bit longer. It takes like a week longer to adjust to those ultra heat conditions and stuff. Sometimes you're like, oh, I can't wait until my body kind of acclimates. But when I get there, I'm usually like, I'm sweating and I'm drinking water and stuff like that. And I'll be delivering and somebody's like, man, aren't you hot? And I'm like, nah. And don't you wish you had AC? And I think I used to say something like, we're not FedEx. What are you thinking? We're tougher than that. But that being said, I mean, honestly, I did used to try and have a good attitude and kind of think of it as toughening me up. But when I think about it in context, when it's winter, we have heaters. We've always had heaters, right? When it's winter, I close the doors and I heat up. In fact, I try to make it so hot in the cab that I'm not wearing a jacket because I hate messing with, I don't know, I don't like being that bulky. Yeah. So I have no jacket on so that when I go into the freezing, it's just for a couple minutes while I'm unloading the packages, get back in that ultra hot cab and go to the next. So I'm going hot and cold to keep my core kind of at a certain level. And thinking about it like that, I'm like, well, if I'm willing to do it during the winter, why wouldn't I be willing to do it during the summer? It's the same methods. What's different from summer and winter? You're just going to close the doors. You're going to try and cool down. Probably try to freeze myself out, same way that I do with winter. Freeze myself out so when I go into that heat, I'm not, I'm kind of thawing out and then get back in it. I don't know how well the ACs will work, but you know what? I'm kind of, yeah, you kind of won me over just right now. I'm like thinking it through. I'm like, why have I always been opposed to that? Not
Oh,
opposed, but I was always like, it's not that big a deal.
I think it's sort of been ingrained to us, as a culture too, that suck it up and to some point, right? That's part of life and anything, but then it becomes we're almost abusing ourselves sometimes too, just to make a point. And man, it's one of those things. You have that kidney failure or that heat stroke, the effect of that can be for the rest of your life. And we don't want anybody to, not be able to work again or have a chronic health condition simply because they couldn't get cool. And like I said, it's easy to say, oh yeah, if you get hot, just pull over and cool down. But that board's going, beep, beep, beep. What are you doing? Where are you at? You're 2 hours behind, on and on and on. Which then we get into Article 37 stuff. And we should be encouraging people to always, set a pace that allows them to get cool, doesn't overheat them. But it's hard. It's hard, right? Because that's not the nature of UPS. It's almost as fast as you can go without hurting yourself. Sometimes that line is not, it's not easy to do.
Well, Adam, what other issues? So you got the 22.4, we got the climate control, both for drivers and in building. And I really like that because that shows a real, that's a real need that I haven't really considered before, but man, the health, just to cool, you said it so well. When it's all the issue is to cool ourselves down. Like, what's the major issue there? Why not? Why wouldn't we set up some standards to keep everybody healthy just by temperature control?
Yeah, it's somewhat minor, and I don't think the cost of the installation is the issue with the company. They look at the mileage, right? Because it's like when you run your car, right? Your mileage goes down, and fuel is probably their biggest cost. I think at one time I heard they're the second largest consumer of fossil fuels next to the military. I don't know if that's still true, but so everything comes down to a cost for them, right? But they just, like I said, just doubled their profits the last 2 years, and so there's enough money for them and their stockholders to go around that they can, I think it's very doable. Their competition's doing it, right?
Yeah.
So it can be done. They're not going out of business running air conditioning. Of course, their argument would be, yeah, you guys make more money. Well, so do you as a company, right? So it's all relative. Another issue, we have the personal delivery drivers or the PVDs, which, initially I think was more of it was a COVID response to, we couldn't get enough drivers, right? So a lot of the PVDs were part-timers that, sort of use their own cars. Now it's a lot of just off the street people. I proposed, and I don't know, and I'm not sure where the international stands on this or the NorCal committee exactly, but is to eliminate the PVD drivers and just hire more drivers, right? Either hire more full-time drivers or train more part-timers as utility drivers, but those need to be our people, period. The PVDs do pay union dues, but at the end of the day, they're not members. They're members for a minute and then they're gone, right? Then they're using their own cars. UPS, like they do rental vehicles, right? They rent the vans and the stuff. During peak, we rent dozens and dozens of feeder trucks and trailers and everything for peak. They can do the same for the delivery. And they do that to a degree, but they need to do it fully so that it's our regular members working year round. And they hire seasonal people in the building anyways. So when they hire those seasonal people, they can just hire more of them, and that allows more of our permanent part-timers to go and be utility drivers during peak. They're going to get driving experience. They're going to make more money. That's where a person who's already has seniority should be benefiting from peak, not somebody from off the street coming in for a couple of months or a month and then leaving. Let's get our part-timers that are already in the building. Let's give them a break, both physically, get out of the building, which is the hardest work at UPS, period. Anything the part-timers do is always, they do the hardest work. Give them a break, get them out. Maybe they can be a seasonal driver using a rental vehicle that UPS provides, not them providing their own car. Starting their full-time wage progression. They won't be full-time, but as Tom spoke to earlier, once you deliver that first ground package after you've completed Intergrad, you start your progression. So you may, as a part-timer, your progression's rolling because you've done peak work. Now when you go full-time driving, you don't have to start at the bottom of your progression. You'll be at full rate. So I propose to get rid of all the PVD drivers. We'll keep that work in-house with our own current members. And I just think that's that's the way it was traditionally done. That's the way it should stay. And, UPS needs to address that by, keeping that work with our members.
Yeah. And it feels like, I don't know, it's our work. It's always frustrated me from day one. And there were some guys who were like, we've always asked for more help at peak, because they used to load us down to the degree where, shoot, I can remember when DOT didn't have rules about a 12-hour day. And there were times in my rookie years where during Christmas, I was out till 11 o'clock at night, which is, unheard of. But you sucked it up and you got it done and everything. And yeah, you wanted more help or whatever. But when I saw them start pulling these PVDs, these personal vehicle drivers, and they started coming on site to load up our packages into their cars. Number one, first of all, I don't like the fact that they don't look the look. And now all of a sudden you've got, Joe Schmo out there in their plain clothes, in their, vehicle. Some people, and I'm not, saying anything about, people's cars. You make do with what you've got, but they're not well kept cars or whatever. They don't present a look that we have created for a reason. We've created a look that of all professional, people can trust us just based on our look, which is crazy, but you can deliver anywhere. You see the UPS, they know you're trustworthy. They know that you hold a standard of driving. Most of the time you're a good driver, you're trustworthy, whatever. There's something that goes with the look that represents the company better. So when I saw these people in plain clothes coming out and taking our stuff, first of all, I was not happy with the appearance of what people are going to receive as a UPS delivery. And second of all, I did not like the fact that, now I know that the union kind of came in and like, well, it almost felt like that old Western where the official sheriff's on his way to go apprehend the criminal, and Barney is with him, and he goes, I need the added help, so I'm swearing you in. Put your hand up. You are now a deputy. Congratulations. Let's go. That's not a good fix for me. I'm sorry. And this is an opinion piece right here. Well, the whole recording is, but my opinion personally is I didn't like the fix that the union, I know we're making do with what we got right now. And at least we were unionizing them, getting some funds out of them. So it wasn't just whatever off the street, but it was such a Band-Aid, honestly, such a Band-Aid, just to like swear them in as the deputy. that, okay, well, you're official union now until until we don't need you anymore. No, I don't like that. To Adam, Adam, I believe you said that you came up with the idea that in order to get around that, the fact that they could still do that if we're just unionizing them, and then it becomes like a UPS employee on contract. The way to eliminate that is to really force them to use UPS vehicles and uniforms, because
Right.
once you do that, what's the point of PVDs for the company anymore? Okay, now you've taken away. Let's get back to the way we've always done it. We've always hired or moved people up in hours and given them the supplies that they need in order to get out there, do the job as we've always done it. And then, sometimes we suffer through, if we hire up added staffing on the full-time driver end or whatever, sometimes we go through layoffs, and that sucks. But here's the thing that happens when you have a layoff list. Those guys now, and they did. By the way, we didn't have this when I first was a rookie. When you were on layoff, I'm sorry, you were scrambling to try and do what you could to survive the layoff time. But now, and it was only a couple years into driving for me, now they have the split shifting opportunity for all of those guys. So here's what happens: you overstaff, you send people out, and then the volume goes down because peak is over. You have a layoff list. Those guys get to split shift. The bottom guys of part-timers who are possibly, I'm not saying all of them, but possibly young guys, probably could, stay at home, or maybe they're roommates, whatever. Not all are going to have the same situation. It's going to be tough on somebody, but the majority of them can handle it because they're still coming into the employment range. And those are the guys who are going to suffer for a few weeks. They're going to survive it. They're going to get in there, and they're going to build seniority. A couple of years from now, they're never going to have to deal with it again. And that's the way we used to do it, and in my opinion, was the best way. These PVDs are a problem for the whole system, and it's taking away our work, really. And we're just deputizing them and making it somewhat official. And I hope that goes away. I really hope that is on the table and getting rid of those, because we need to do something and it just empowers the company. I really think. I think it's a better way to do things.
Well, and it was a Band-Aid for COVID, right? And COVID created so many issues like that now we can see, it's given us, it's sort of exposed the things that we can fix and know where we can do better. Volume was stacking up weeks behind across the country, and as many part-timers as you trained to drive, just as many were going out the other door on COVID leave, right? And so it was, trying to make sure that those packages got delivered, because the last thing that we wanted was for UPS to lose volume, right, our customers, because we can't deliver those packages. So it was a temporary fix, maybe the best option at the time. I don't know how else, because we couldn't get same issues you had staffing wise and driving you had in part-time. Part-timers were staying home. So you had this just huge void of staffing, but that's no longer the case. And now, to Tom's point, I think we already have the mechanism in place, which is have an abundance of drivers. And when you don't have work for them, they go back in the building. We had gotten pre-COVID so much into having just enough drivers, instead of that abundance. And then COVID hit, we were totally unprepared, right? Totally unprepared. So it was somewhat, that's part of the company's doing, that they started running things so thin. They tend to run operations, as though they're going to run perfect, and that's never going to happen. And then when it doesn't work, they say, oh God, we need help. And I think COVID has shown both sides that you better have some cushion, right? Because something can always happen. And we need to be prepared for some of that. And that's just just no need for that anymore. Those same people that were PVDs could have been the seasonal part-timers coming in, working in the building, which would allow our higher part-timers to be utility drivers, right? And work all peak as a driver. So the same jobs would have been there for those people who are coming in off the street, but they would have come in at the bottom, not doing sort of a premium job. And so the same number of people are employed, the same number of people are union members, but we're rewarding seniority, which should always be where we're erring. So it wouldn't have displaced anybody. It would have just brought them in at a different place.
No, I agree. I like that. I like that analysis too. So Adam, we're running out of time today. So I'd like to end the episode here and continue on with the same subject, kind of dig into if there's some more issues we want to be looking at, more topics, maybe in your proposals, maybe get behind the scenes on what those meetings often look like, and just the overall, needs that we have for this upcoming contract, and talk a little bit more about what a strike involves, how it affects us, and our families, what we should do to prepare if we can. There's a lot of ifs in there, but I'd love to run through a few more of those scenarios with you on the next time.
Absolutely. I think this is probably a topic for a few episodes, right? As far as proposals, the process, what a strike means. Both me and Tom were there in 97, in the last strike. And we won that strike for one reason, because we were unified. It's plain and simple. Crossing the strike line, while it may be a temporary fix to your financial issues because you get paid, it is a long-term, it's basically you're shooting yourself in the foot for the rest of your career. And we need to let our members know what that means, right? And we'll get into that more next time, but it's important. We need that education. So Tom, once again, I appreciate the time to do this and looking forward to the next episode.
Me too. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for coming on. Thank you, everybody, for your support. Man, we're going to keep doing this as long as we can, as much as we can, and empower you guys, because we're all in this together.
Yep, exactly. So with that, I guess we'll sign off. And Tom, thanks again. And thank you, everybody, for your time. It means a lot.